People who have been in a coma, what was it like? Do you dream? Does it feel like you've been asleep for a long time? My dad has described his 2-month coma after his car accident. He said he could hear bits and pieces of what was happening around him, but it was like a dream that he couldn't wake up from. When my 2 siblings and I would come in and talk to him, his heart rate would go down. When his friends had come to sit with him and watch a football game, the nurses made them turn it off because his team started losing and his heart rate blew up. I was in a coma for 6 weeks with double pneumonia, sepsis and kidney failure. I have very few vivid memories from being under, but had some very strange visions once I woke due to the amount of drugs I was pumped full of. I had no concept of time and thought I had only been out for a day or so. For me, the drugs were the most memorable part of the whole experience. They are very good drugs. I remember nothing of being in the actual coma, and I know I was awake conscious at least half a day before any memories started to form. There was no sense of panic or alarm when I was told what happened. My emotions were very much blunted by the benzos. You could have told me the doctors removed both of my legs at the hip and I wouldn't have cared. I wasn't sure how long I had been out, but it certainly didn't feel like days. I knew instinctively that the drop panel ceiling tiles above my hospital bed that I had been staring at for hours were just standard rectangular drop panel ceiling tiles, but I simply couldn't make them appear that way, no matter how hard I tried. The ceiling looked like a Picasso painting to me. Also, I remember all the colors around me in the ICU unit were incredibly vivid, the bluest of blues, the yellowest of yellows. The whole experience of waking up is not instant, it takes a couple days to become fully aware and functional again. Like a computer rebooting after a power outage. Overall, it was like a foggy mushroom trip. It does weird things to your memory that you don't discover until after the fact. At the time it happened, I had a job operating a specialized piece of machinery, and I was pretty good at it. I spent months learning how to use it. When I returned to work after 8 weeks recovering, I could remember my co-workers and the layout of the building and stuff like that, no problem. But the machine I had spent the last year operating every day was completely alien to me. I couldn't remember how to load it, how to turn it on, which button controlled which function, etc. I'm a huge football fan, but I have no recollection of my favorite team literally winning the world championship earlier that year, despite having rooted for them my entire life. Certain compartments of my brain have been zapped, while others have been left unscathed. During the time I was out cold, Donald Trump won the 2016 election. I had absolutely no memory of him even running for president, until my brother told me in the hospital that he'd won. How do you forget something like that? What the duck? It was like I had a stroke and woke up in bizarro world. How long were you actually out? I was out for 6 days. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks altogether. I was in a training exercise for a halo jump. My oxygen cable got disconnected and I was struggling to breathe. Ended up blacking out 4 times until my reserve chute deployed and twisted itself. I came down extremely fast and shattered many bones including my ribs, collarbone and parts of my jawline. I was out for 4 years and I felt nothing but waking up. Now it's vivid flashbacks. Holy shit. 4 years. After the initial jump I got a little separated from the group and that was normal to fix. Except I was dealing with hypoxia and couldn't locate my squad to maneuver myself to safety. Once I got past cloud cover I slowly regained consciousness, but not enough for me to realize my situation. I was thrashing head over heels violently. 3,000 feet left to go roughly and out goes the reserve chute. And it never caught wind. Just enough fabric to slow my fall. I couldn't see much since it was 2 AM. In for the final stretch and my heart sank. No scream. I just focused on untangling myself, only to have the wind knocked right out of me. I hit the ground so ducking hard I'm just gonna list the injuries. I broke my left wrist. Both ankles shattered. Cracked pelvis. Shattered jawline and parts of my right collarbone. To left lower rib shattered but one upper rib bone punctured my left lung and plenty of torn muscles and ligaments on my legs and left arm. So as you can imagine I went feet first and crashed down on my left. But my vision went out. In the first few seconds I felt my heart beating, the blood throughout my body. No pain. Only the pressure. With every beat I could feel some tingling sensation in my toes. And it felt soothing. But every beat drew pain. I moaned for air, but with every tiny seeping breath I grew my strength back. And the pain just greeted me with a wallop. It turned into a scream. And I kept begging for my mom. It's all I could say. Every breath was mom. But I could never make out the chatter on my comms. Once my team landed, they went to search for my body. I was in agony for 37 minutes until they arrived. I couldn't move when I landed. All the screaming eventually rolled me onto my back. But my lungs were filling with blood fast. I was fighting for every breath, but the blood became too much. At some point I opened my eyes to make sense, but I started to slip out of reality. I do remember my squad running up to me trying to assess my situation. So I got rolled to my side and that hurt. So I reached out with my right arm and grabbed the guy by his sleeve, who was trying to keep me awake. I just didn't want to let go, but I was out cold again. It's like falling asleep. Soothing. At peace. I never heard the rescue team arrive via heli, nor do I remember anything much else. And after my 4-year nap, I'll say this. You don't dream. And you can't realize time when you're not conscious. So therefore you awake with no perception that time has passed. You just feel very rested and exhausted. I lost my mother at the age of 4. Only 2 memories I have of her. So I felt at peace when I was dying. Just so I can hug her once again. But I'm just torn that I can't serve anymore because of the extensive damage. Well, I time to ponder my life and enjoy it with my family. I must cherish my life and keep doing good. Only then I'll bring my story to my mother so we can all sympathize with. Dying as heck, but it's so peaceful. In another time I'll rejoice. It was only a few days in a medically induced coma. But I just remember it being dark. Short blips of family being in the room. And when the doctor first tried telling me where I was and asking me if I knew my name, I was tempted to answer it as Britney Spears. But I didn't want my parents freaking out. A good friend of mine was in an accident this past summer and ended up in a coma for about 2 weeks. He said the only thing he really remembers is dreaming he was walking around in the dark. After walking for a few minutes, he saw his eyelids, as if he were inside his own head. As he approached them, they opened, and that's when he woke up. I was in a diabetic coma for 2 days. No dreams, no nothing, just out. When I slowly woke up I had some kind of mild minor amnesia. I didn't know where I was, or who I was, but I recognized my mom immediately when I saw her. TMI, but the doctors were just about to put in a catheter when I woke up. Then I peed for like 2 minutes straight. The nurse was impressed. Fellow T1D here. I was in a 24-hour coma due to a sustained low. I also had amnesia, but mine was rather severe and took weeks for me to get my short-term memory back. The emergency room diagnosed me with confusion. I had a C-section and woke up 4 days later in ICU. Amniotic fluid leaked into my lungs during the C-section. I also lost a lot of blood and needed 3 blood transfusions. I was only in a coma for 4 days. It was black. No dreams. No time passing. My memories of before the coma don't have a timeline, nor make any sense. To me it happened in surgery. I was fully awake and started getting tired and then black. Family says it happened differently. That it was after and had visitors for those days. I don't remember any of those days at all. I still have issues with short-term memory. I also want to add I apparently fought the ICU when they were intubating me. I needed a bunch of nurses, orderlies and doctors to hold me down. Days later when I woke up, I was strapped to the bed, in my mind unable to breathe. That part was traumatic. ICU nurses and doctors like the fighters though. It means they're still fighting you. That's actually a good thing. An annoying thing, but good. It's the same with NICU babies. They love those annoying babies. There's fights, so then there's determination and spunk. Those are the babies who survive. My youngest was a NICU baby for 3 mths, and at 1.5 pounds he somehow managed to hook his toe around all of his cord and would pop his monitors off all the time. Doctors and nurses would go running over just to him being a little shit. I would come in to visit, and nurses would tape those monitors on him. I was out for 6 weeks due to a brain virus I wasn't expected to survive. I had no concept of how long I was out when I woke, and the first couple of days are very sketchy. I don't remember any dreams, but I do have memories of what happened in the room around me, so I can confirm that it is very important to talk to people in a coma. I don't remember any dreams. I also don't remember removing my 4th needle twice. Serious car accident when I was 9. My father sat in a rocking chair for 3 days waiting for me to open my eyes. When I did, I asked about a new friend. My father didn't know she was in the car. He thought I'd lost it for sure. If it makes you feel better, 4ths aren't actually a needle. The needle just introduces the little plastic catheter and then it's pulled out. When I learned that, I felt much better about moving with one in. It's not like giving blood where the needle stays in. I was out for a week when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I remember very small bits and pieces, but not sure if they were from coma time or from the wake up process. No concept of time, no consciousness, no dread, no pain. Just felt like being asleep for me. My stepdad was in an accident and was in a coma for just over a month, or just under 2 months, and he doesn't remember any of it. Keep in mind that he had a brain injury, so I'm sure that changed things. However, there was a History Channel documentary playing for weeks on end in his room, since he loved history. And when he came out of the coma, he thought that he had lived through the documentary, not during the coma time, but as if it was an old memory. He kept telling people about it, and even said my mother's name keeps saying it didn't happen. But I was his chef. I remember it. No, it didn't matter to him that he actually had never known how to cook anything outside of a microwave. Like a few other diabetics have said, I also don't have any memory of being unconscious after passing out from high or low blood sugar, usually in my sleep. Just suddenly came to, sweaty, disoriented, or in the emergency room. It's really scary to see how much time you've lost. Wonder why you're so sore, seizures, and sometimes hear about what you said or did that you don't remember at all. Other times you do remember the lead up to unconsciousness, but you were too sick or confused to help yourself. Fortunately, with new continuous glucose monitoring technology, I haven't had any major issues for a few years now. It's a huge relief. Not a coma, but sort of related. I once sat up after giving blood and passed out onto the floor, breaking my nose and chipping a tooth. I had a long, involved dream with many people and storylines. When I came to, I didn't believe the nurse when she told me I was only out for a second or two. I don't give blood anymore. I once had a seizure while getting a blood test. It was far and away the scariest thing I've ever experienced. It's felt like a nightmare drug trip. I remember seeing what I interpreted as demons all surrounding me, shouting and moving around me. I couldn't remember what it felt like to be alive. It felt like this had been my existence forever and would be my existence for all eternity. The sheer confusion and terror I felt in that moment, that only lasted a minute or two of real time, felt like I'd spent an eternity in literal heck. When I came back, the demons I was seeing were actually doctors and nurses, all surrounding me, holding my head, etc. I don't really have a point, this just reminded me of my experience. My first wife, at 18 before I met her, had a cardiac arrest in a swimming pool and drowned. Fortunately for her, there was a CPR class going on right next door, so help was there immediately. She was 2 weeks in a coma, and at first wasn't expected to survive. Then was expected to have suffered severe brain damage. Instead, she survived, returned to college 6 months later, and finished her 4-year degree in 3 years. Later married me, had 2 kids, published a book, and practically single-handedly opened a charter school before her heart finally gave out at age 43. Long introduction. Sorry, she told me that during the coma she had strange dreams that later she realized were real things happening to her. For example, people in scuba gear hovering around her, the surgeons when they implanted her pacemaker, a little girl trying to push her out of bed, nurses trying to change the bed. There were some other stories I no longer remember. My sister wasn't in a true coma, but was mostly unconscious for a week. She remembers having terrifying nightmares about things that were actually happening to her but were distorted. The worst one is that she remembers being tied down and stabbed in the neck. Well, she's not wrong. They had to put a special, very large fourth in her neck, a central line for dialysis. Since she was so out of it, we had to tie her extremities down for the procedure because she was fighting it. So yeah, we tied her down and stabbed her in the neck. PTSD from being in an ICU very sick is a real thing. I say we because I work at the hospital and helped. I remember being put up for surgery as a teenager and waking up groggy halfway through to see the surgery was just the doctor grabbing my broken bones and just kinda jamming them back into place while I couldn't feel pain. The cast and sling I got were also subpar. Sorry you woke up during surgery. That's scary. But do you mean the cast they put on in the OR? Those aren't meant to be great. They get slapped on to perform a function. Also, they need to allow for swelling. You don't usually get the pretty cast until way later in a follow-up office visit. As for the sling, they use whatever the hospital orders. Your surgeon definitely doesn't pick it out themselves. LOL. I did get a second cast. The sling was made from a strip of bright pink foam tied up like a balloon animal, which is worse than the operation to a teenaged boy. Waking up in the middle of your skeleton being manually rearranged is a fun story for your friends to gross them out. Showing up to class wearing something bright pink and fluffy not so much. Not a coma, but I train BJJ. Was sparring and someone put a collar choke on me, but I could breath so felt safe. Turns out it was a blood choke and I went out. I remember vividly sitting at home playing my Xbox, wife and daughter sitting on the sofa next to me. I knew what game I was playing. The sounds on the game and the mission I was doing was like a normal day. Then I had this feeling in my belly, like I was falling from a great height, then my eyes shot open. Apparently I had only been out for 15 seconds or so, but was a lifetime. I was in a medically induced coma for 6 days. I was just about to turn 16 that month. We were out riding dirt bikes that night and I just so happened to run around a corner just at the exact moment my best buddy was riding his dirt bike around said corner going like 35 miles per hour or so. The dreams were insanely long, intense, and I woke up thinking they all were real. I freaked out and threatened to kill everybody because in one of my dreams I saw my mom get ripped limb from limb and I saw the people that did it standing around my hospital bed smiling. They had to restrain me and put me back out. When I came to again I was more calm and my mom was trying to talk to me, but I just wouldn't look at her because I didn't believe she was real because it felt so real watching her die in that dream. I thought I only slept for a day at first until my dad told me it had been 6 days. One of my dreams I got shot when I was in the Middle East somewhere fighting in the military, and he asked me if I knew why I was in the hospital. I said, yeah, I got shot. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.